From the depths of Halifax Harbour, where history is quite literally littered, to the city's Maritime Museum of the Atlantic comes this hunk of metal. Irving shipbuilding workers found it deep in the muck when they were dredging the harbor. So what story does it tell? Well, that's the question the museum's curator of marine history / detective, Amber Laurie, wants to answer.
I always get a little bit emotional if you're always looking for, oh, maybe it's Mont-Blanc, but you also have to ask yourself, well, what if it isn't? And if it isn't, what is it? And so that's part of the detective work.
Back in 1917, the SS Emo accidentally struck the SS Mont-Blanc in Halifax Harbour. Munitions aboard the French ship ignited, the largest man-made pre-atomic explosion. More than 1,700 people killed, 9,000 injured. Pieces of the Mont-Blanc were blown over an 8-kilometer range, but it's what still lies beneath that's intriguing historians.
It's 8 kilometers of the known pieces, so if you think of the downward pressure of the explosion and where that might have also flung some of the metal pieces, is quite interesting. So that's what we can learn from this project, is just how far some of that might be. I can't imagine how heavy that piece is, and that's technically a small piece.
Yeah. There are already lots of small pieces of the Mont Blanc in the museum for comparison.
In the marine casting, when it's subjected to explosives and high heat, so you would see this twisting, this irregular twisting. This is not a natural endpoint for this metal, so it's irregular. And often you have sharp edges, you'll have the metal starting to twist over itself like you see here, and in some cases it's a lot more than just this one twist. So that is indicative that it has gone through some type of explosive event.
Each piece helping to fill in the story.
Yeah, so Mont-Blanc was riveted, and in 1917, that's typically how ships are still built. You also have wooden ones that are still kind of, starting to enter, phasing out age of sail, for example.
And so now, with this recent discovery of the new pieces, the puzzle work of the last century continues. Could this be a piece of the SS Mont-Blanc? The metal is the right kind.
But one of the biggest things that jumped out at us is this welding right in here. And welding is slow to take on in the shipbuilding industry. The invention is there in the later 1800s, but it's not widely used yet. You don't really start seeing the welding being applied to vessels from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. It kind of depends on the shipyard because it's an expensive technology to put in place. So we see that here. So automatically we think, oh, well, this likely isn't Mont-Blanc, it's something else.
What else? They're not sure. But there are other, even much larger pieces, the size of cars, that were dredged up, that are almost certainly from the Mont Blanc, with all kinds of the telltale signs. The pieces are being temporarily held by the Irvings. Amber Laurie has seen them and describes them as dramatic.
Was it a feeling of history slapping you in the face? I mean, what was that feeling?
That's a good way to describe it, is just kind of the magnitude of the event, because the pieces are so big. And yes, I understand that a lot of the smaller pieces, injured and killed people as well as, but I think standing next to the big one and just understanding the scale of them is something that, I will always think about.
Which is why Laurie and others would like to see some of the larger pieces put on display, because for all the stories told and the black and whites of that dramatic time, truly grasping the sheer scale of the disaster is still the goal, more than a century later.
Well, should it matter to people who are interested in our history and our story, what happens to them?
I think the human element, the stories associated with disaster, is the important piece. I think seeing a car-sized piece is important so that they can also have the same feeling I did and just understand the magnitude of this event. And yeah, I look forward to seeing where that goes.
For now, the province says it's, quote, looking at its options for what to do with those pieces of history from deep in the harbor, so that, as historians believe, people can better understand a tragic story they say should be kept close to the surface. Tom Murphy, CBC News, Halifax.